with you talking about being authentic, if you feel like you found your authenticity yourself, if you've had to release anything in that process, I'd be curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question, Carrie. So, through those first couple of years when I was really kind of struggling with like just feeling like I was yelling too much, having that shame, like not knowing what to do with this whole, like, I thought I was going to be perfect. I actually went on this really interesting retreat. And it was something that I think was very life changing with the people that were on it. I don't remember the name of it, but there were just maybe like 10 people were in this retreat of kind of showing the mirror to yourself. I remember they said that, of showing the mirror to yourself. I was dealing with a lot of, like I was saying earlier, like anxiety and some OCD stuff. So my therapist had recommended, like, maybe try this out. It was like a 3 day long retreat. It was very
Wow.
eye-opening. And so anyway, they essentially talked about how you have an inner child. And I know now, I think it's becoming a bit more common knowledge. But
Yeah.
back then, or maybe just for me, I didn't really understand what that meant. Where felt like I kind of suppressed my inner child almost, where like I was too scared to bring my inner child out. I didn't want to get yelled at growing up. I wanted to, I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to be perfect. And my inner child was too vulnerable. And I think that retreat did a really amazing job at kind of opening up your eyes to just being and just allowing yourself to play and to listen to your inner child. And so after that, I started to try to think about, what do I like to do as Valerie? Because society can say, well, this is what moms are supposed to do. This is, ourselves can say that, but what do I like to do? And I did one of those like value checklists. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but if you like
Yeah.
search them, like
I
it'll
love
say like, what are your
yeah.
top, 3 to 5 values? And I looked up, or I like kind of thought about it. I'm like, oh, I like adventure. I like learning. I like exploring. And so like, why don't I try to live life more like that, but also incorporate my kids into it? So I started doing more of that. I started like taking them more on walks and exploring and doing those things. And it honestly like really filled my cup and made a big difference. And this wasn't like an overnight thing by any means, but it was just like continually and allowing my inner child to play with my children. And sometimes we can't always do that, but when we do, like when I do that, I feel more like the mindfulness in that moment. I have more memories with it, and I just feel more alive, if that makes sense. And that makes me think of like just how often do we allow ourselves to like be in the rain, or like I don't know, like we talk about doing cartwheels. I don't know the last time I did a cartwheel. I don't think I could do a cartwheel, but like that kind of joy, like
Yeah.
I just think that's so underrated. And I try to just be more childlike with my children. And that allows me to grow. And really studies show that that is so powerful, like that play, like adults are supposed to play. And, as a nurse practitioner, kind of going back to that, think about like in pediatrics, for example, we ask our kids in the clinic, we'll say, what do you like to do for fun? Because they're going to give you they aren't really going to know how to say, like, how much exercise did you do this week? Like, you just ask them, what do you do
Yeah.
for fun? But it changes when when they become an adult. We then ask them in this quantifiable way of like, how many hours per week do you do X, Y, or Z? And it's like, why don't we ask that anymore to adults? Why don't we ask them, what do you like to do for fun? And I feel like, it just would make such a difference if we really examined that and then just kind of didn't underrate that as much in our lives. So that was a kind of a long-winded answer, Carrie, to what your question was of living my authentic self. But I think it is almost like learning how to be a child again in a way.
Yeah, I love that tool. I love the value checklist. I actually did it. I had somebody recommend it for my husband and I to each do on our own, and then we compared them together. And it was interesting because our top number one, I can't remember if it was family, I think was number one. Number two was adventure for both of us. And then number three, his was secure, like financial security. He's the breadwinner in our house. I don't know if that's the right term. Sorry. He's the primary income. And then I'm like my number 3 was spirituality, which is my version of financial security is like a faith-based version. So it was kind of interesting how they were related. But yeah, I think it's kind of fun to do with a partner too sometimes.
That's a great idea. I want to do that with my husband because I don't think we ever did it together. I know we've done it separately, and that was it
Yep.
was. I know he did it like years ago, and so we should do that. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Values almost like what is like
Yeah.
our values.
Yep.
And then creating family values too.
Yeah, because it was really fun to then take that and then see, okay, well, we value all of these things. And yes, the pandemic was really hard for us because we couldn't travel. And that's where we get a lot of our adventures. Traveling is so fun. It's where we can find our flow, where we can put aside. I feel like both my husband and I step out of that perfection box that you can tend to get into when you're at home in the regular life. And so you just feel so free when you're traveling and there's 2 parents there for the children. You're not on your own. You've got a backup. So yeah, it just we feel so alive and so in the flow, and it just feels so cool.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah, it was really interesting to think about that. So now, and that gave us the idea of, okay, so we want to prioritize the travel. Yes, in the pandemic, we got to do hiking. I don't think we were skiing at that time, but we got to get outside and still have some adventure, but it was very different than getting to travel. So now we kind of have a little bit of a travel fever trying to catch up for that time. But
I understand that.
I was going to ask you, you mentioned you had written for me love as an action. And I was like, what is that? That sounds so beautiful. Would you tell us more about that?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think that goes back to this whole mom as a verb, love as a verb. This whole to mom being a verb is to allow one to rise, care, protect. And it really made me think about how we can, when I think about to mom, meaning to love is really an action. What we do is an action. Like we can think about whatever it is or whoever we are, but what do others see is our actions. They see, almost like going back to that whole video thing of like with my daughter, like I was justified in my head for whatever it was, but all she sees is mom being angry. And so how can I live more with my verb? How can I to mom more? Or even like going outside of the parenting realm, but how can I love as an action? How can I make a difference? How can I spread ripple effects? I think that's so important to lift each other up as moms and as people, doing work that truly matters. And I think that, if I can make a difference, if I can, maybe try to smile more often and be able to be, something that helps someone else to be kind and then have that ripple effect, I think it can be so powerful. Even like talking to strangers, it's really interesting. I mean, in a safe setting, I know like there's this study, Epley, at University of Chicago, and they had assessed a variety of individuals commuting downtown Chicago of how would you feel if you talked to a stranger? Would you like it or not like it? And most of them said, no, I wouldn't like it. But afterwards, most of them really enjoyed it. And I thought that was really interesting that we just keep to ourselves so much. And if we can just be kind and use that as an action, it not only helps others, but it helps ourselves. It helps, I feel like, really like just our community, society, and the world. I think if we all live more with that, this world would be a better place, in my opinion. And so that's what I think about when I think of action and how can we just be kind to one another.
It's kind of interesting because I went to an event at Gaia. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's kind of a little bit of a spiritual network. They have a lot of shows and stuff online. And
cool.
There was an author there. Yeah, there was an author, Lynn McTaggart, and she has this theory that she was putting into practice while we were there. We had no idea what we were doing. It was this free event, and I've always wanted to go to Gaia. So I was like, let's try it. Yeah. And so her theory is when we are setting an intention as a group, and she really emphasize the group setting. So setting an intention as a group together, and our intention was for peace. And so she was doing an experiment and she chose a location and she said, let's choose Washington, D.C. We didn't know the location before we arrived. My husband and I didn't even know what we were doing. We just had a babysitter and had like a fun, peaceful date. So she said, we're going to look at DC and we're going to sit together, we're gonna hold hands, which is, you're sitting next to a stranger and you're holding their hand. So it's especially for introverted, highly sensitive parents like my husband and I were like, oh, okay, this is odd. Pandemic. I'm going to have to handy Sandy later, but, or wash my hands. But, so we're all holding hands and we're setting the intention and we're thinking of peace and love and healing together in this environment. And then she also broadcasted it online live. So there was an online community doing it at home as well. And we were all thinking of the one place. It was interesting because while we were there, I saw like an image. I was having a hard time with my almost 10-year-old. He was feeling a lot of emotions at that time. And I had this fear of what is going to happen. Am I getting through to him? Is he going to have a hard time later on? So Lynn McTaggart's philosophy or idea was, as you are working to help others and you're setting this intention and this love for others, you receive it for yourself. And you receive a healing almost in a form like this energy piece of this healing that comes towards you when you're thinking of others and sending love to others. And so we were sitting there and I had this idea of my son and the things we were going through and the challenges at that time. And all of a sudden I just, and I was trying to focus on what we were talking about, but I also saw my son in this problem. And I just had this energy, this peace wash over me. And it was really interesting. And I was picturing the picture they had showed us of DC and sending love. And all of a sudden I heard in my head, you are love, or I am love, you are love, we are love. And it just kept repeating in my head, I am love, you are love, we are love. And it was really cool because I just had that wave of peace wash over me. And then as we were talking, a lot of people, we discussed it as we ended. It was like 5 minutes of this intention and this peace and love. And a lot of people had all these different peaceful moments as well, and this receiving of love that they received as well, even though we were focused on DC. So it was just this really cool. You'll have to check her out, Lynn McTaggart.
Yeah, I definitely will. That sounds incredible. What an experience. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so it was really interesting to think about when we're sending love out to others and having this intention for others, how we're also receiving love and sending love to ourselves without realizing this whole piece.
I love that. And it's like that collective experience. And like,
yes,
I think that's just so cool. And, as a musician, like, well, I haven't played in a long time, but I always like love thinking about like just, I think it's Andrew Huberman calls it the concert phenomenon, when like literally during, like if we're at a concert or something that we both are enjoying together, like our heart rates will synchronize and our breathing synchronize. It's just fascinating to think that. And this can happen like with storytelling, where you can almost like telling stories from different generations even. It's just the coolest thing that it surpasses love. Stories, experiences like this can surpass just everything. It's just, I really find it also fascinating. And, when I grew up, I think there was so much fear and anxiety and whatever else there was. Like, I can't really speak for, what my mom, what was in her head versus what I saw, because I saw a lot of angry mom. But I feel like there is, she would kind of almost like, I think growing up I felt like, fear or control was the answer. Yeah. Not necessarily love, not necessarily letting go or being kind or, those things. And the more I feel like I experience life, the older I get, the more it's like, that truly is what matters. That truly is like, that's strength. That's power. Kindness is power. And it is not a weakness, but strength. And it's something that takes incredible strength and bravery to do sometimes. And so I think it's just so neat, all of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know I've been doing a lot of, there's this thing called solfeggio frequencies, and it's an idea of certain frequencies of music can help to like, realign our energy in our body. And there's different frequencies for, it goes with the chakras. So there's like a throat frequency, a heart frequency, and then it has the colors of the chakras. And playing it on YouTube for my kids before they go to school, which I forgot this morning, but we're a little out of whack on a Friday morning. So I've been doing that, and I'm thinking about it. It's like we're also there together. I wish I could test our heart rates in that moment, right? To see if we're all listening together, eating breakfast and listening to these frequencies. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about with music.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And even like sometimes I think we overlook, like, I remember as a musician, I had an issue with rushing. They're always like, don't rush, don't rush. Like, I love playing fast. Like, it was just so cool to play fast.
Yes.
And it was the hardest to play slow. Like, it was so hard to just kind of take that note in and then move on to the next note. And bringing it down sometimes is like, almost like I feel like it takes practice to do it. Almost like it's like in life. Like we're so used to rushing, to go, go, go. And being mindful and, bringing it to that slower tempo, to that slower pace, and truly savoring the moment for what it is.
And going back to that fear piece too, we're rushing as parents. If we don't get them to soccer when they're 5 on time, they're not going to be the next soccer superstar and get that scholarship to college, or they won't get into Stanford. Or, whatever school you're shooting for. Like, it's just this pressure.
Yes.
And that often leads to the yelling. There were times where I was yelling. I'm a very peaceful person. And so to yell, I'm like, what is this? My mom didn't yell. I was a pretty calm kid because I was a perfectionist and scared of getting in trouble and having to have everything perfect, trying to be the perfect child so I could be loved was my inner child pieces. But as I'm yelling as an adult, I'm like, where is this coming from? Oh, it's coming from fear. If I don't yell, if my kid is getting out of hand and I can't control the situation, I can't teach them how to be a good human right now, what are they going to be? They're not going to get into college, right? Where are all those fears as parents coming from? That's so much the core, I feel like, for yelling.
Absolutely. I think that's so, so true. And I think, it's so incredible, going back to the brain, and like, I love thinking about like, like the whole fight or flight, and this yelling is like from this little almond, that amygdala. And it's literally the size of an almond. It's so small, but it creates so much of a powerful response. And I should say reaction. And like going back to this whole reaction versus response, I love this quote by Viktor Frankl, where he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. Within that space allows us to, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but essentially within that space lies our growth, and within that growth lies our freedom. I know I didn't say it as eloquently as he has, but essentially he's saying, lengthening that space, and that allows us to be free. And when I think about it from that amygdala, like there's that fight or flight, that part of my brain is reacting, it's fear-based, it's, this is, we're going to run late, and then X, Y, and Z, they're not going to get into this school, they're, whatever that is, that's all the amygdala firing. And how can I respond more with my logical part of my brain? And it's within lengthening that space of like taking that mental back road of like, let me build different pathways. And like, the fear-based is so like, it's a survival thing, right? Like, but the amygdala doesn't really understand that. And I think it's just so interesting where it's like, doesn't understand that it's okay. It's not like a life or death thing. If our kid doesn't get, doesn't get to soccer on time at 5 or whatever, as long as, it's more of this, like it's this false thing it's responding to, and lengthening that space is just, I think, so key for me to at least be aware of, like, am I responding or reacting right now in the moment?
Yeah. Do you feel like, watching a video of yourself yelling, that would bring up so much emotion. Oh my gosh. Did you come to give yourself grace, compassion? What worked for you you had to heal yourself after that?
Wait, Carrie, actually, and I've written and talked so much about it. I don't know if I have given myself that grace, because I get so like, I can't be like that. Like I almost like have to work on it. But I think it is saying, again, going back to that perfection of it's being imperfect, and we're not always going to be perfect mom. Like, we're going to make mistakes, and it is okay, because then it allows moments of repair, and it allows us to say, mom messed up, like, and here's what I'm working on. Like, you're working on this at school. Well, I'm working on yelling or whatever that is. And I think it makes us more real.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know, I guess, like if that's like what my kids are going to say later on, like, was that the best way to do it? But to me, that's what makes me feel most content. It makes me feel more comfortable because I'm real then, and I'm embracing my true self, and I'm not trying to be perfect because that's not what it's about. Like, that's not what being a mom or being a parent should be about. It's about love, and we can get so wrapped up in all this fear and all this stuff, but if we just allow ourselves to be and love, I just think life becomes a lot more simpler and a lot more enjoyable that way.
Yep. All right, I have one more question for you, Valerie. I have to know, what's your tip or tool that you've used for yourself to either heal from the perfection, heal from watching the tape of yourself?
So I would say, Carrie, that my favorite tip would be that, John Gottman talks about the 5-to-1 ratio for marriages, so like 5 positives to 1 negative. But I like to focus that on myself. I think that relationship with myself, of how can I counteract my negative mental tape with 5 positives. And I think that that's so hard to do. I mean, it's someone, I can say it and like go on about, oh, here's what you should do, write it down. I can tell others that, and I can say 5 positives to others. But when I say it to myself, it's just a lot harder. And practicing and growing in that, I think, is something that I not only work on, but I feel like when I focus on that, the more I give myself grace and forgiveness. And and sometimes I think 5 is a big number, but the more I focus on the positive, the less I'm focusing on the negative. And sometimes that's just, I got the kids to school on time today, or something like that. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but the more I can reframe my thoughts into more positive as opposed to negative, that just really has helped me, I think, just grow in that. Like, we're always growing, we're always learning. And for the longest time, people thought adults didn't, but we really are. We're learning.
Oh yeah.
All the time. And so that's what I'm learning now, to be kinder to myself and to counteract those negative thoughts and purposely do more positive than negative. So that would be my tip, I would say.
Love it. I've never thought of it that way for ourselves. That's beautiful. And Gottman is awesome. We did their marriage course together, my husband and I. It was wonderful. Yeah, I would recommend them. I love that.
I'll have to check that out too. Yeah, I've always wanted to do more with just like it's so the more we can do positive in life as opposed to negative is just so key. I feel like, to everything.
Yeah, we couldn't. It was between my kids, between the first and the second, we did it. I would totally recommend it. And we did like the self-taught version, so you could go at your own speed.
That's good.
So I'd recommend that one too.
I'll have to check it
out.
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I have so many things to do with my husband now. We have to do a value list together. The Gottman course. It would be great.
Apparently the universe wanted you to focus on that this weekend or coming up. That's what it's putting it into your mind. Apparently you're meant to hear that today.
Yes. And Carrie, as we're going on, I mean, you've been very gracious with me, as my kids have been literally all over the place. It's not, and I'm grateful for that, like changing that and being like, it's just like, it's okay. It's okay. So, but I appreciate your graciousness very with that too. And I think we're always learning something.
Thanks so much, Valerie, for being here today.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie. I truly appreciate it.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in, Changemakers. This is Carrie. And if you haven't done a review for us, 5 stars and a little few words about what you've enjoyed in our podcast episodes, we would really appreciate it. If you guys would like to ever message me, I would love any questions you have or any feedback at info@hearttoheartlife.com. We also have a brand new website, which we're super excited to share. It's hearttoheartlife.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, and happy life, happy times, Changemaker families. Bye. Please remember that the information shared on this podcast is educational in nature and does not constitute licensed mental health advice. If you need such advice, you should speak with a licensed professional about your unique situation. Thanks so much, happy listeners.